I ended up almost bankrupting my family with that company, buying their terrible leads, which 90% of the time were just recycled over and over and over again. I was not making money. I was racking up credit card debt and burning through savings very quickly. By the grace of God, I happened to be scrolling through Facebook and I saw an ad for Jucebox, which I thought was the weirdest name for a company. Now with Jucebox this past month, I had one of my best months ever where we made $60,000 in a month. And now we're consistently clearing over $30,000 a month, which has been a huge impact on my family.
We're just so grateful for the time that you can spend with us today and really excited to kind of dig into some of your success and why that's occurred. So before you joined Juicebox, we're going to go back a few years. I think you've been a client for a couple of years now. What were some of the problems in your business were you experiencing before you kind of made the shift to Juicebox?
So my story is a unique one in that, I've been in the insurance business since 2009. I was on the employee benefits side doing supplemental health benefits. And then when the pandemic hit, that really put a stop in that business and I had to pivot and find something else. So I was attracted to or fell for one of those IMOs that, advertises heavily on social media, talking about how you make $400,000 in your first year. And, they have the world's best leads and all this kinds of stuff. And in my mind, I said, I've sold life insurance before. I'm a good salesman. I could do that. It was a new model in terms of having to buy leads and things like that. But I figured, based on the numbers that they were touting, I would be successful at it. And one of the things that attracted me to this IMO was, their stance on that they had the best leadership, the best mentorship, the best training, and they guaranteed your success, right? Oh, of course, as a lot of things in life that are sounding too good to be true, it was. I ended up almost bankrupting my family with that company, buying their terrible leads, which 90% of the time were just recycled over and over and over again, which caused a ton of stress in my house. When I changed careers at the time without telling my wife, she was pregnant with our second child. So there was a lot of financial constraints surrounding that. It was really difficult, trying to figure out mortgage protection or final expense and what lead vendor is the right lead vendor. And
What were some of those things that you had tried prior to joining Juicebox? You talked about like buying leads. Can you talk about that in a little bit more depth?
there was probably about 5 or 6 different companies I went to because I realized the leads that the IMO was selling us were recycled garbage. So then it was, okay, let me research other lead companies and see what else is out there. And so then I decided I'll focus on mortgage protection. So I started buying every mortgage protection lead under the sun from half a dozen different companies. I remember there was one month I must have spent $20,000 on leads, and I think I might have made $5,000 that month.
Was that like generally where you were in the business quantitatively in terms of you were never at that stage in your career net up?
Correct. I was not making money. I was racking up credit card debt and burning through savings very quickly. That lasted from the end of 2021 till about the summer of 2022 when, by the grace of God, I happened to be scrolling through Facebook and I saw an ad for Juicebox, which I thought was the weirdest name for a company. But I grew up drinking High C. I love Juicebox. It's Ecto Cooler. So I've said, all right, let me take a look at this ad. And what caught my eye was it was Jim Fisher talking to another individual who was wearing a polo shirt with the logo of the IMO I was currently with. And Jim was talking about the system and the increased sales. And so I said, all right, well, this sounds really good, but I don't want to get scammed again. So, and I can't make another decision without checking with my wife. So I had her watch the ad and we discussed it. And I said, why don't we book a call with their team to find out more about this? And so we did. We had a Zoom meeting with one of their marketing directors, and I believe it was you. And, what stuck out to us was you guys were able to show us the system. It wasn't just telling. You showed with numbers and screenshots, and this is our model, and this is how we do things, and this is the level of support you can expect. And if you do this, you can expect this result because we've proven it. And that was like a light bulb went off. All throughout my career, I had been looking for, even when I was in supplemental health benefits, it was mentorship, systems, structure, because in order to grow a business, those are key fundamentals. And you listen to any millionaire, any podcast out there, they're going to tell you have to have systems in place and then repeat those systems to scale your business. And to that point in my career, I was just getting by being a really good, charming salesman. So now that, I'm with Juicebox, I've become a partner to Juicebox. We're having some amazing success. I mean, when I was with the previous IMO, like I said, I was net negative every month. Now with Juicebox this past month, I had one of my best months ever where we made $60,000 in a month. And now we're consistently clearing over 30,000 a month, which has been a huge impact on my family. My wife works with me now, and we're able to provide for our 2 kids. Daycare in New Jersey is not cheap. So, we're able to cover all of those expenses, and it's really just changed our lives completely.
So, Kevin, if we could, because I think for a lot of folks out there, they've had a similar experience to you where they've been burned in the past. They've heard promises and they've been under delivered upon. And so, what were some of the things that you were worried about when you and Miranda, your wife, were considering working with Juicebox? Like, what were some of those things in your mind saying, we've got to do more research on that, or we've got to kind of look into it?
Well, obviously the cost of buying leads. We had been burned by buying leads before. It wasn't a company we had really ever heard of. Again, it's got a very funny name, but I kind of resonated with the name. So, those are really the biggest concerns was, is this too good to be true? Is this legit? Is what they're saying really going to come to fruition? And when it was broken down for us on that initial call and then subsequent calls and showing us the training platform and, the scheduled routine check-in calls and the scheduled routine training calls, like all of that kind of made it seem more legit, seem more real, something that we were willing to roll the dice on. Like we understood that in order to build a business in any industry, you have to invest in your business. The question becomes, what are you getting from that investment? Are you just throwing money at the wall and praying, or is there a system in place that can ultimately guarantee you a certain level of success if you're willing to put in the work? And that was something that I understood very early on was, if I work the system will work for me. And that really meant a lot. And so far it's been wonderful, and I'm very happy.
So what then made you decide to do it anyway, given some of those reservations and that past history? What was the one thing?
At that point, it was either calling my old boss and begging for my old job back, or working at Home Depot. So we didn't really have another option. It was, we got to give this a try. It was our last ditch effort. It was our last ditch effort. It was give Juicebox a try, or we're going to be out of the industry. I say to Jim all the time, he saved my career, he saved my family by running that ad on Facebook.
So we talked a little bit about that success that you've seen recently. And I think, off camera, we were talking about, your target and where you're going to end this year at. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
But the finances aside, personally, you work with Juicebox and now you've found the success that you've been looking for through hard work and following the system and really being just a dedicated and passionate individual. So what is that, the business side, what's it led to personally for you?
Well, first off, it's a lot less stressful. Not having to worry about making sure that our bills get paid every month, knowing that they're paid without having to think about it. We track everything, we see the income coming in, and we're able to save again. We're building it back up from the money that we lost during the lost year when I was chasing mortgage protection. And just having that level of stress relief has made me a better husband. It's made me a better father. We're able to do things as a family. My wife and I, we take one day a month just off from work just to be together. We go out for a nice lunch, or we'll go see a movie just so we can spend some time together. Make sure that we're very active with our kids, that they're never missing us or anything like that. And we do one nice family vacation every year. And even when I'm on vacation, I'm still responding to leads and stuff, but ultimately I'm able to be present more, which is really helpful. And with this model of being a virtual advisor, it's so much easier to be present because my commute's very short. When I have dinner with my wife and kids, and then dinner's over and it's like, all right, kids, dad's got to go to work for a little bit. I'll be back. And then a half hour later, I'm back playing with them, and I never had to get in the car. I didn't have to drive anywhere. It's a wonderful feeling, coming from an industry where I was driving all over the state, and I live in New Jersey, the Garden State, which is nothing but highways. Everybody says, what exit are you on? There would be times where I was gone for an entire day, and just driving, eating terrible food in gas station convenience stores. And, it was just not a life I wanted to live anymore. So the life that we have now is kind of what we've always dreamed of. And we're very grateful and happy.
Kevin, to somebody on the other side of this, they're watching it right now, and maybe they're in one of those FMOs that talked about
Run while you can.
and this isn't really an FLL conversation. It's more about you and your success, of course. But maybe they're doing mortgage protection and final expense, and now you've really transitioned into a retirement income expert and professional. Can you talk about that shift, how you've made that shift and if you think it's been the right decision for you.
Oh, 100%. I mean, there's a place for things like final expense and mortgage protection. I'm not knocking it, but so many Americans, from what I've now learned over the last, 2 years that I've been with Juicebox, are so underprepared for retirement. And I take a lot of pride now in what I do. I truly, truly enjoy what I do now because I believe from the bottom of my heart that I am helping people. I am changing lives every single day. I'm a hungry learner. We have an amazing community of independent agents and advisors that I'm now a part of. I've developed amazing relationships and friendships through that community. I'm studying now to become a certified financial planner after one of my mentors here through Juicebox. And it's just made such an impact, not just on my life, but the lives of the people that I'm able to help. And now at a point where my clients are coming to me and saying, hey, you helped me so much. Can you help my sister? Can you help my brother? Can you help my kid? Can you help this person? And that's also having a huge impact on my business, is growing through that word of mouth referral business. I look at it as, there's three legs to the stool of my business now, and it's my marketing, my referral business, and then organically trying to just word of mouth, locally within my own community. And it's just been such a blessing.
So as we wrap up here, where are you going to end this year production? And then what's 2025 look like for you projecting out?
So my goal this year when the year started was 5 million in production. I fully believe we're going to surpass that. Should probably finish the year closer to 7.5. Stretch goal would be 10, but I always said to myself, 5 was the goal. 25, the goal is 10 and beyond. And then in 25, one of the goals is to scale our business. It's to start implementing additional systems, potentially hiring an additional employee and an admin to help out. And over the next 5 years, really grow to a point where we can consistently produce 20 million a year in business is my goal.
I just got shivers. What do you say to somebody on the other side of the camera? They're considering Juicebox.
You're a fool if you don't. This was the best decision I ever made in my career. Something that, everybody wants to retire at some point. I love what I do. I could do this till I'm 70. It's fun. I love learning. I love being a part of this community. I love giving back to the community. And the impact that I have on other people's lives and the income and impact it's having on my family, there's no better feeling in the world. I wouldn't trade it for anything. So run from your IMO and get over to Juicebox where you belong.
Okay. Thank you, and always.
My pleasure, brother.